That is a beef braciole, or braciole, depending on who you ask. It is an Italian staple, one of my favorites. Really not difficult to make. Takes a couple hours total of cooking time, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Braciole, or braciole, depending on who you ask, is kind of like chili is to the United States. Every Italian family has their own version. You could literally put just about anything in it as long as you follow the two basic rules. You take a piece of dense meat, usually top round, and you pound it out thin, and then you stuff it and roll it up and cook it in red sauce. The most important ingredient is the beef. Now this is top round. Now you can see in the pictures right now what it looked like when I bought it, and I just sliced it into 3 thin pieces, which we're going to pound out. Keep in mind when you're buying top round, a lot of times it's going to be listed in the store as London broil, which is absolutely ridiculous. London broil is a cooking style. It's not a cut of meat. It's how you use a top round to make it London broil. In this case, it's going to be braciole. Let's talk about some of the other ingredients. Prosciutto. Now this is Italian prosciutto. You can use any prosciutto you want. If you don't like prosciutto, I guess you don't have to use it. You could use Canadian bacon or ham, but it won't taste the same. And again, there are 1,000 ways to make braciole. This happens to be the way I like it. A little Genoa salami. We've got some Romano cheese and Parmesan cheese. We've got some garlic. Use the zest of a lemon. I'm going to use some pine nuts, a bell pepper, and a small yellow onion chopped up. Some pasta, some raw spinach, some fresh basil, olive oil, a little bit of red wine. It really doesn't matter what kind you use. In this case, I'm using the leftover from last night's bottle of Pinot Noir. Breadcrumbs, you can make your own or get them in a jar. Really doesn't matter. If you get them in the jar, use the Italian breadcrumbs because they have the seasonings. It's going to pair with all this. You need a hammer, pound up meat. You will need some twine to tie it up with. You'll need 3 cans of peeled tomatoes. These are going to make our sauce. Salt and pepper, basil, parsley, oregano, and my little secret personal additive, Italian red wine seasoning. If you can't find this, don't worry about it. You don't have to have it. It just adds a little zest. You can use red pepper. If you're going to make red sauce, you got to put on an apron. I don't want to wear all of it. But before we get started on the red sauce in this pot, I'm going to get a cutting board and some saran wrap, and we're going to get the meat ready to go. So I've got some plastic wrap laid out, and I'm going to take one of the thicker pieces of meat and lay here. And then I'm going to take another piece of plastic wrap and put over the top of that. With your tenderizing hammer, we're going to use the flat side. We don't want the pokey little holes in here, right? And we're just going to flatten this out. You can see that piece of meat's a lot bigger than it was when I started, but it's encapsulated in this plastic. So all we're going to do is pull that apart. We've got our braciole roll, which is quite a bit thinner. And I'm going to cut that in half. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other pieces. Once the meat's all tenderized, we're going to start making our red sauce. Very simple process, but it's a good idea to do it, get it underway before we start building the stuffing for the meat and then rolling the meat, because the meat's actually going to cook in the red sauce. Got my pan warming up on medium high, and I'm going to add some olive oil across the bottom, a couple of teaspoons. And I'm going to move this so you can see the base of the pan. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is, as this starts to warm up a little bit, we want that olive oil to start coating the pan. You'll see it separate. We're going to go ahead and add our onions and peppers into that pan. Now I've opened up my tomatoes. They're sitting here waiting. I'm going to add some oregano to this. Maybe close to a tablespoon. And some parsley, about probably half as much. Basil. My red wine Italian seasoning. I'm going to do some salt. Some pepper. This is a garlic press. If you've never used one, it's the easiest thing in the world. You just put a couple cloves of garlic in here. I'm going to use this roasted garlic and just squeeze it. And then just shave it off. We're going to saute those vegetables and let them get pretty soft before we get ready to add the tomatoes to this. After a few minutes of cooking, I'm going to deglaze this pan with just a tiny bit of red wine. And bring our heat down to medium and add the tomatoes with the juice from all three cans. Now, if you don't own one of these, you can get one on Amazon for a couple bucks, and they're worth it. This is designed to break up meat in a frying pan, but man, does it work well when you're making red sauce, because you don't have to get in there and break up every one of these tomatoes by hand. You can just kind of run this thing across them. If the sauce starts to get too thick, you can add some water. Or even some chicken stock, or beef stock, if you wanted to, either one. But I like to let it do its thing for a little while before I start manipulating it at all. All right, to make the filling, we're going to use a lot of the rest of the ingredients, except for the pine nuts and the beef. So I'm going to start with Italian breadcrumbs. I've got my basil, my spinach, my 2 cheeses, some garlic. And I'm going to zest a lemon. And we're going to need olive oil. So we're going to build this. You can do it in a food processor if you have one. I don't like food processors, so I have my blender. We're going to do it. First, I'm going to zest a lemon. And there's no rocket science to this. You can use a hand zester or whatever you want. But when I'm doing it right here on top of the blender, it's just easier to do it with this pyramid. All right, I've zested my lemon pretty well. It smells really good in here, by the way. This is going to be used to clean my garbage disposal. Now, we're going to add some olive oil. There's no exact science to this. So you just have to kind of go as you go and keep adding things as needed. I'm going to put breadcrumbs across the bottom. The more breadcrumbs you use, the more olive oil you're going to need. It's going to be like the world's weirdest pesto. And I know a lot of people don't do this. That's okay. I like doing it this way because I like the creaminess of the product this way. I like a lot of Parmesan. And as far as the Romano, I'm just going to put about half of this cheese in there and some garlic, spinach, my basil. Now we're just going to turn this on. So I want this a little creamier than it is. So I'm just going to crack an egg. So we're going to build the braciole. Check on our sauce every so often. Turn that a little bit. I want it at a slow boil. I don't want it roaring. So the first thing we're going to do, let's look at what we've got here. Got the salami, we've got the prosciutto, we've got the green mixture we made in the blender, we've got a cat who wants to eat. I've got pine nuts, a little bit more of the breadcrumbs, and the meat. You do not need the salami. All right. So just take out one of your pieces of your top round. And then we'll take a piece of prosciutto, which for me, half the trick is not eating it while I'm doing this because I love prosciutto. And then we'll just lay that gorgeous piece of ham right there on top. I'm going to move the camera so you can actually see what this looks like instead of seeing me doing it. We're going to take a couple of pieces of salami and put those right on top of the prosciutto, and take some of our green mixture and just spread this around without getting it all the way to the edges, like so. And then a few pine nuts. I like pine nuts. And I always put just a hint of breadcrumbs on top of that. Get a piece of twine set up and ready and a piece of scissors close by. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll this. Okay, so you pack it as tight as you can. Maybe I'll roll it from the other side, which is going to be difficult, but at least you'll see how it works. You pack it tight and just keep rolling it over itself and pushing stuff in until you have this little cone of meat. Now we need twine, and you do not need like 35 pieces of twine. It makes me crazy watching people do this. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 times the length of your piece. You take this and you come about 1/3 of the way in with what I call the coin, the underroll, down. And you bring up about that much of the twine and you tie a knot here twice. Okay? Then you bring your twine underneath and around to where you want to tie the second knot. Then go around, tuck this in, go around the side, all the way around over here to your original piece. And tie one more knot. And there, it's ready. Now you're going to repeat that with each one of these, and then they're going to cook in the sauce after we brown them. Hi, Panther. All right, so our process here, here's our pieces of meat. We're going to start out with some olive oil. Roll that around the pan. Now all we want to do here is brown these on all sides. So just set them in there. Let them do their thing. Speaking of doing their thing, Barkley, Panther, they know it's kitchen time. Once you've got some nice color on these, we're going to take them right out of the pan. I'm going to turn this heat off. And I've added some water to my red sauce. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop them right in there. Okay, once they're all out of the pan, I'm going to take some red wine and a whisk. And deglaze this pan. Okay. And just roll that right into my sauce. I'm going to move this back to the other burner, turn this off. I'm going to set this at low, medium low. Keep in mind this burner was hot. Now what's going to happen is this is going to all become magnificent over about the next hour to hour and a half. There's no rush on this. Keep the heat low and just let it do its thing. It's been about an hour and a half. The braciole's been cooking in the sauce. I just started some water with a little garlic butter floating in it so I can cook some linguine to go with it. Let me show you what it looks like at this point. It really is done, but I like to let it continue to cook in the sauce until my pasta is ready. Turn the heat down as low as I can get it. And if you just pull one of these pieces up, you can see how tender it is. I mean, that's top round steak. It's like the toughest meat there is. So it's doing its job. The sauce has that really nice, slightly oily texture that you want in a really good marinara coming off of the meat. And this is just going to sit there and simmer with the top off now for probably another 30, 45 minutes while I get noodles ready and get ready to plate it up. There's no magic here. I've got a pair of kitchen shears, a pair of tongs because this stuff is hot. And just set this under your roping twine. Cut there. You should be able to just let it roll right off once you do that. When you're slicing this, what I like to do is cut the center first, and then you can see what it looks like. And then you just cut some pinwheels like so. As far as plating goes, I like to put a little bit of sauce on the bottom of a pasta bowl, like so. And then some of my pasta. In this case, we're using linguine. Just making a nice little mix. Got one of the bracioles that I've cut up. Set it like that. And hit it with just a little bit of red sauce. There it is, ready to eat.